This strange monster was captured by a trail camera deep in the Congo jungle. And it is not the only thing you are about to see today. Every single recording on this list was made by ordinary people in ordinary places who stumbled onto something logic simply cannot explain. Creatures that should have gone extinct millions of years ago. Strange lights with no clear source. Some of these discoveries are terrifying. Others simply should not exist. Stick around because the worst one has been saved for last. The woman in the building. Two explorers stepped into an abandoned concrete building, buried deep inside a silent jungle. No guides, no backup. Nobody even knew where they had gone. It was just the two of them, and miles of darkness pressing in from every side. Then something made them look up. Standing on top of a high concrete wall was a woman who should not have been there. She was painfully thin, deathly pale, completely motionless. She did not move a single muscle. What happened next left both men shaken. At first, they thought she was a statue, maybe an old mannequin someone had abandoned years earlier. She looked too still to be alive. Then one of the explorers took a few cautious steps closer. That was the moment everything changed. Without warning, the figure slowly lifted one arm. The movement was horrifying. It was far too slow, far too stiff. Nothing about it looked human. It was as if something lifeless had suddenly come alive. Then she pointed. At what? Nobody knows. The second her arm rose, the two men turned and ran. They refused to wait even one more second to find out what she wanted. They believed she was a ghost. Others believe something even darker happened that day. They think it was a real woman standing on that wall and that she was only seconds away from ending her life. Some people believe she was reaching out for help, and whatever she was trying to tell them disappeared into the jungle with her. If you found something like this in a jungle, how would you react? The River Tribe. Deep inside the jungles of Papua New Guinea is one of the most isolated places on Earth. Some villages are so difficult to reach that even today, authorities still have not identified every tribe living there. There are still communities that have never had contact with the outside world. Most people would never dream of going anywhere near it. But Darata did. The Irish travel influencer, famous for visiting some of the world's most dangerous places, hired a local guide, climbed into a small wooden boat with a handful of tourists, and headed deep into the jungle. He had one goal, a very daring one, if you ask me. He wanted to find and film an isolated tribe that, according to local people, had never made contact with the outside world. The locals also shared a much darker warning. They claimed the tribe ate actual human flesh. Most people would have turned the boat around right there, but Darata? He kept going. The moment their boat reached the riverbank, the tribe suddenly burst out from the trees. They looked unlike anyone the group had ever seen. They carried bows and arrows. Within seconds, they started firing toward the boat. Panic exploded. That was when their guide shouted one desperate instruction: "Offer them the salt." The guide knew something the tourists did not. In that part of the jungle, salt could be offered as a sign of peace. If the tribe accepted it, there was still hope that everyone might leave alive. Datara quickly offered salt. For one terrifying moment, all eyes locked onto the tribe's leader. Then came the answer nobody wanted. He rejected the gift, and that was when things took a terrifying turn. With the gift refused, the tribe was now free to do anything to them, even hunt them down and kill them. The guide screamed for everyone to paddle as fast as they could. The boat spun around, and everyone fought to escape before another arrow could find its target. Somehow, they made it out. But the story becomes even more frightening. In 2018, an American missionary named John Allen Chow was killed after trying to contact the isolated in the Indian Ocean. Darata knew that story. His guide knew it too. They understood exactly how dangerous contact with isolated tribes could be, and they went anyway. But the most chilling part came after they escaped. When Darata posted the video, he revealed something that stunned many of his viewers. He said he was going back the very next day. Whether that was extraordinary courage or unbelievable recklessness is something people still argue about. One thing is certain: if the tribe had made a different decision, that boat might never have returned. The Trail of the Abyss. A group of hikers was making its way along one of the most dangerous trails on Mount Wui in China's Fujian province. The path was carved into the side of a cliff and was barely wide enough for one person to walk. A massive drop ran along the edge, and one careless step could send someone plunging over the edge. As they moved forward, the woman behind the camera suddenly shouted at everyone to crouch immediately. Her voice turned urgent as she warned them not to stay standing for even another second. What happened next shocked everyone. Before she even finished speaking, one of the hikers suddenly lost his footing and slipped off the edge. He disappeared over the side of the cliff. Nobody could see where he had landed. The cliff was far too steep for anyone in the group to climb down and look for him. Rescuers rushed to the scene, and 12 firefighters began searching the mountainside. For 6 long hours, nobody knew whether the missing hiker was alive or dead. Then they finally found him. He had landed about 10 meters below the trail in a heavily wooded area. Both of his legs were badly injured, and he could not move. But somehow, he was still alive. One false step nearly ended his life. It also forced 12 firefighters to risk their own lives during a 6-hour rescue just to bring him back to safety. Now imagine standing on that trail yourself. Would you dare take even a single step? The figure on the hill. A group of people was standing on the outskirts of Caxambu in Brazil's Minas Gerais state when something strange appeared on a hill across from them. At first, they could not tell what they were looking at. It was standing completely still in the distance. Curious, one person pulled out a phone and started recording. What happened next left everyone confused. The strange figure suddenly began moving down the hillside. Nobody could explain what they were watching. One person behind the camera could even be heard saying that whatever it was had come down from the hill about an hour earlier, but nobody had been able to identify it. Then the video spread across the internet. That's when people started offering their own explanations. Some insisted the figure was an alien. Others believed it was an angel. The most skeptical argued that it was nothing more than a metallic object reflecting sunlight. But none of those explanations answered every question. Then people remembered something even more disturbing. In the spring of 2023, the same area made headlines after 17 cows were found dead under deeply mysterious circumstances. Every animal had deep wounds around the neck and head. There were no signs of blood on the ground. Not a single piece of meat had been eaten. Authorities believed jaguars were responsible. But that explanation raised even more questions because jaguars do not kill an animal and simply leave the entire body untouched. So what was that figure standing on the hill? Some people even swore it was responsible for the mysterious deaths of those cows. Whether that is true or not, one thing is clear. That hill has become the center of one disturbing mystery after another. So what do you think that figure really was? The creature in the hole. Somewhere deep inside the Indonesian jungle, someone recorded something that should not have existed. The video shows a man walking toward what looks like a dark hole between a pile of fallen logs. At first, everything seems normal. Then something slowly crawls out. What happened next has never been fully explained. The creature had thick, rough skin. Its eyes bulged from its head. Every movement was slow, deliberate, and deeply unsettling. At first glance, it looked like a Komodo dragon. But the longer you watched, the less that explanation made sense. Komodo dragons do not normally live inside holes between piles of logs. They do not behave like this. And the creature in the video did not even seem to match the size of a typical Komodo dragon. But that was not the most disturbing part. The man approaching this mysterious thing did not panic. He did not even look surprised. That leaves us with only one explanation. He already knew the creature was there. Then he calmly started feeding it. That meant this was not the first time. He had done this before. Nobody knows who that man is. Nobody knows where that hole is. And nobody knows what else might be hiding inside it. So if you found that hole in the middle of the jungle, would you dare walk any closer? The crying in the jungle. People who know the jungle have passed down the same warning for generations. If you hear someone calling or crying for help in the middle of the night, do not answer, do not call back, and never react. One man either did not know that warning or chose to ignore it. He was camping alone high up in a tree. He believed sleeping above the ground would keep him safe from anything moving through the jungle below. He could not have been more wrong. Just an hour after he began camping there, someone or something below sounded as if they were crying. At first, he thought it had to be a person, so he looked down. What happened next made his blood run cold. Standing beneath his tree was a dark figure. It did not look lost. It did not call for help. Instead, it slowly walked back and forth beneath him, as though it was waiting for something. The man pointed his flashlight straight at it. Most people would have covered their eyes or run into the darkness. This figure did neither. It stayed exactly where it was. Then everything went silent. For a few long seconds, nothing moved. That's when the unthinkable happened. The figure suddenly laughed. It was not the reaction anyone expected. In many jungle cultures, people believe some unseen creatures can copy human voices to lure people out of hiding. Some believe they cry like a frightened person. Others believe they even call your name. The goal is always the same: to make you reveal exactly where you are. The second the figure laughed, the man cried out in fear. If those old stories are true, that single reaction may have been all it needed. He may have just revealed exactly where he was. Some people even believe that by answering, he had unknowingly established communication with whatever was standing below him, giving it the right to attack. Nobody knows what happened next. The video suddenly ends, so if you heard someone crying for help deep in the jungle after dark, would you answer? The woman in the stream. Behind a small town, a narrow stream runs down a quiet mountainside. Most of the local villagers refuse to go anywhere near it. They rarely explain why. They simply tell people to stay away. One man decided to find out for himself. He took out his phone and started recording. What happened next in that stream has no clear explanation. Sitting in the middle of the water was a woman. She had long black hair. She wore dark clothing. She was completely still, as if she had been sitting there for a very long time. But one question has never gone away. Did she suddenly appear after he started recording? Or had she been sitting there the entire time, unnoticed, only revealing herself once the camera was pointed in her direction? Nobody knows. At first, the woman looked like an ordinary person. Then the longer he watched, the stranger she became. She did not move like a living person, but she did not look lifeless either. She simply sat there, watching, waiting. Nobody could explain what they were seeing. That's when people began talking about an old legend. Many Asian cultures tell stories about a mysterious woman who lives in rivers and streams. According to those stories, she does not appear to everyone. She only shows herself to the people she has chosen. And once you see her, you should never go looking for her again. The man who recorded the video never returned to that stream. But the story did not end there. People who live near the mountain say that when the wind blows through the valley at night, they sometimes hear what sounds exactly like a woman. Whether that sound comes from the stream or from something else, nobody knows. One thing is certain: very few people are willing to go back and find out. The Amazon rainforest. The Amazon rainforest is one of the last great unexplored places on Earth. Scientists estimate that only about 10% of the species living there have ever been identified. Vast areas are so remote that almost nobody has ever set foot inside them. Every year, people discover things that science cannot immediately explain. But what one man found hidden on the forest floor was far more disturbing than anyone expected. He was walking through the Amazon when something hidden in the thick vegetation caught his eye. He stepped closer to get a better look. What happened next has never been fully explained. Lying on the forest floor was what looked like a skeleton, but it didn't look human. The skull was unusually large. Its shape looked badly deformed. Its jaw hung wide open in a way that did not match any normal human skeleton. Then the man noticed the hands. The fingers were unbelievably long, several times longer than those of an average adult human. The rest of the body looked just as strange. Its proportions did not match any known primate. The longer you looked, the less sense it made. So what was it? Nobody knows. As far as anyone can tell, the remains were never sent to a laboratory for testing. No official explanation was ever released. The story simply disappeared. That's when people started asking even bigger questions. If entirely new plants and animals are still waiting to be discovered out there in the Amazon, then what else could still be hidden beneath that endless forest? Whatever that skeleton belonged to, one thing is certain: nobody has ever given it a name. The Night Marcher. In Hawaii, there is an old legend that many locals take extremely seriously. It tells the story of the Night Marchers, the ghostly spirits of ancient Hawaiian warriors who are said to walk through the forests after dark. According to the legend, if you cross their path and look at them, there is only one outcome. You die. Most people dismiss it as nothing more than an old story. Then something happened that made others think twice. In 2019, Kay Borlace was taking part in a grueling 100-mile endurance race through the forests of Oahu. Her friend Cassie was running alongside her as a pacer and recording parts of the race with a camera. Nothing seemed unusual that night. At least that was what they thought. They only discovered the horrifying truth after they returned to their hotel and started looking through the photographs. That's when the unthinkable happened. In one of the pictures, a dark figure could be seen standing among the trees. Neither of them had seen anyone while they were running. That was what made the photograph so disturbing. At that point on the trail, there should not have been anyone else. All of the runners were moving in the opposite direction. Tourists were not allowed on that part of the course at that hour. Kay and Cassie had not passed another person for hours. Yet there it was, a dark figure covered from head to toe, moving silently through the trees. Then people remembered the old legend. According to Hawaiian tradition, if you ever encounter a night marcher, there is only one way to survive. You must immediately throw yourself face down on the ground and never look at it. Kay did not know that. She never saw the figure while she was running too. She only discovered it later in the photograph, and according to those who believe the legend, that may be the only reason she'd lived to tell the story. The light on the hill. In a remote village in Southeast Asia, a group of villagers suddenly gathered in the middle of the street. They were staring at a hill overlooking the village. Something horrifying was happening at the top, something they had never seen before. One of the villagers quickly pulled out a phone and started recording. A strange light was flashing from the top of the hill. It was not flickering like a normal fire. It did not spread through the trees. Instead, it appeared and disappeared in a steady, controlled pattern. Then one witness shared what he believed he had seen. He said something had landed in the jungle. According to him, it was about the size of a bus. Moments later, it began giving off an intense light. Nobody could explain it. There were no high-voltage power lines anywhere near that hill. There were no known military bases in the area, and no official explanation was ever given. That's when the mystery became even stranger. The flashing continued for several minutes before suddenly stopping. Then the light vanished, just like that. But nobody went up the hill to see what had caused it. The villagers were too frightened to find out what was waiting for them in the darkness. To this day, nobody knows what was at the top of that hill. So what do you think they were looking at? A rare natural phenomenon or something that was never supposed to be there? What lurks underwater? On the bank of a jungle river, a man spotted a fish stranded in the grass. It looked completely dead. He picked it up. He turned it over in his hands and took a closer look. Then he decided to throw it back into the river. It seemed like a simple act, but what happened next shocked everyone. The fish hit the water and immediately started moving again. Then, in less than a second, something exploded out of the river and took the fish whole. There was no warning, no sound. One moment the fish was there. The next, it was gone. The water erupted with incredible force before falling silent again. Whatever took the fish vanished beneath the surface just as quickly as it had appeared. Some people believe it was a crocodile. Others think it was a giant snapping turtle. Either way, nobody would want to have a hand that close to the water. But that was not the most frightening part. The attack happened so fast because the creature had already been there. It had been lying silently beneath the surface the entire time. The man never even knew it was only a few feet away from him. And if that creature had decided it wanted something bigger than a fish, this video could have ended very differently. The young man on the road. A driver was traveling alone through the jungle in the early hours of the morning. The road was completely dark. There was no phone signal. There were no houses. There was nobody else on the road. At least that was what he thought. Then his headlights lit up something in the middle of the road. He slammed on the brakes. What happened next left him completely confused. He grabbed his phone and started recording. Sitting in the middle of the road was a shirtless young man. He was sitting perfectly still with his legs crossed in what looked like a meditation pose. He did not look up. He did not react to the vehicle stopped only a short distance away. But that was not the strangest part. A cow was standing nearby. Nobody could explain why the young man was there, and nobody could explain what connection he had to the animal. Some people believe the whole thing was just a prank designed to frighten drivers traveling through the jungle at night. But that explanation leaves one important question. Why would anyone choose to sit perfectly still in the middle of a deserted jungle road before sunrise, waiting for a vehicle to come along? Whatever his reason was, the driver never stayed long enough to find out. So what do you think that young man was really doing there? The silent stalker. A family set out on a hike through the Amazon rainforest. They hired a local guide, brought along their 2 young daughters, and followed a narrow trail deep into the forest. They believed they were alone. They were wrong. Something had been watching them the entire time. It stayed hidden in the thick vegetation. It made no sound. It gave away nothing. Then the mother spotted the stalker. It was a puma hiding among the trees only a short distance away. Nobody knew how long it had been there. It could have been watching the family for several minutes or much longer. The most frightening part was that the family had walked right past the puma without realizing it was there. By the time they finally spotted it, every move they made mattered. One sudden movement, one panicked reaction, or one wrong decision could have changed everything. So they stayed completely still and calmly watched the animal as it watched them back. Then, after several tense moments, the puma chose not to attack. Wildlife experts say there are no confirmed records of wild pumas hunting humans as prey. But they also warn that the situation can change instantly if the animal feels trapped or believes its cubs are in danger. The family was lucky. Very lucky. The face in the cave. A woman was walking through the jungle when a couple traveling with their young daughter asked her to record a video of them in front of a waterfall. She happily agreed. The family smiled for the camera. Their little girl laughed as they stood in front of the falling water. Everything looked completely normal. What happened next was only discovered after the video was over. When the woman watched the recording again later, she noticed something hidden in the background. The family had never seen it. Tucked inside a dark cave behind the waterfall was a motionless figure. It never stepped out of the darkness. It simply watched. The body seemed to give off a faint, pale glow. Its face was almost completely white. Only its head was visible, barely peeking out from the darkness inside the cave. It looked like something waiting there. Waiting for what? No one knows. The most unsettling part was not the figure itself, it was the family. During the entire recording, they never looked toward the cave. They never realized they were only a few meters away from whatever was hiding inside. Many places have old legends warning people never to get too close to caves hidden behind waterfalls. After watching this video, it becomes much easier to understand why. The girl by the trail. A man was walking along a path beside the jungle when a young girl suddenly called out to him from the other side. She kept motioning for him to come closer. Something about the situation immediately felt wrong. Instead of walking toward her, he pulled out his phone and started recording. At first glance, the scene looked completely harmless, but then people noticed something hidden in the background. Behind the girl, partially concealed by the bushes, another person stood perfectly still. He never stepped forward. He never called out. That's when the video took on a much darker meaning. Some people believe the girl was being used as bait. They think her job was to lure that man off the path, while the person hiding in the bushes waited for the right moment to rob them, kidnap them, or something even worse. Others believe the entire video was staged for social media. They point out that the girl's clean clothes do not seem to match someone who has been standing in the middle of the jungle. Those details have made many people doubt the video's authenticity. But there is one fact that is much harder to dismiss. Police in parts of Latin America and Southeast Asia have documented real cases where criminals used young women to lure victims into isolated places before an accomplice stepped in to rob them, kidnap them, or worse. Whether this video is real or staged, that part is not fiction. So if someone you have never met called you over from the edge of a lonely jungle trail, would you walk toward them or keep walking? What the trail camera captured. Deep inside the Congo rainforest, a team of biologists set up dozens of trail cameras to search for wildlife. The cameras were designed to switch on only when something moved in front of them. The scientists expected to record gorillas, maybe okapis. If they were lucky, perhaps even an animal that had never been documented before. What happened next was the last thing they expected. One of the cameras captured something that nobody has been able to explain. Walking calmly through the vegetation was a massive human-like figure. It wore what looked like a large wooden mask. Long horns rose above its head. Its body appeared to be covered with clothing made from leaves, branches, and other natural materials. The figure did not seem frightened. It simply walked past the camera as though it already knew it was there. Then it disappeared back into the jungle, and it was never seen again. The trail cameras continued recording for months. Nothing like that figure ever appeared a second time. That's when people began searching for answers. Some believe it may have been a member of an isolated tribe living deep inside the Congo, where some communities are still believed to have little or no contact with the outside world. Others believe the camera captured something the rainforest has kept hidden for generations. Nobody knows which explanation is correct. But one thing is certain. The Congo rainforest remains one of the least explored places on Earth. And if one unexplained figure could walk past a scientific camera without ever being identified, it makes you wonder what else is still hiding beneath its endless canopy.